Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katarina is away this week. Here's what's making news tonight.
We need to identify what's happening in our downtown, not as a criminal problem, but as a healthcare problem.
This community, our city, is the #1 city in the country per capita of moving people from homelessness into housing. That is our record, and I stand on that record, and I commit to doing more.
It'll certainly help our local tourism industry who are still recovering from COVID.
Thanks for joining us. Weeks away from Windsor's municipal election, and two mayoral candidates made policy announcements on issues you've told us are important: affordable housing and keeping Windsor safe. Our Dale Molnar has that story.
I know residents are fed up.
Mayoral candidate Drew Dilkens laid out a 7-point plan today to make the streets safer. It includes more policing, more security cameras, establishing neighborhood safety officers, and reviewing the mobile crisis rapid response team to determine if new staff or a model is required to better coordinate local response. It's very similar to the plan for more policing and cameras he laid out in 2018, but Dilkens is also taking aim at panhandlers, who he says residents are complaining about.
They tell me that they're afraid to go downtown. They tell me that they see behaviors that, although not criminal, create a sense of insecurity that need to be addressed.
He says he will ask City Council to enact a bylaw prohibiting panhandling at intersections, banks, bus shelters, and other areas. He says the Goodfellows don't fall into that category.
I think the general public understands that is not panhandling, that's more fundraising.
But this man asking for money downtown today doesn't see a difference in his case.
At Christmas time last year, me and a friend made a bunch of wreaths and crosses and Christmas stuff, and we handed them out and saved half the money. Half of the proceeds went to buy presents for homeless, and we bought 100 presents.
We need to identify what's happening in our downtown, not as a criminal problem, but as a healthcare problem. And we criminalize the people that we see panhandling in the medians.
Mayoral candidate Chris Holt says more needs to be done to help people with mental illness.
Once I become mayor, I will be committing to, at the very least, 8 more outreach workers downtown that can work in partnership with the police.
Dilkens, however, is also committing to pushing for more mental health facilities with a 24/7 drop-off location for people in EMS to bring people in crisis. But Holt says increasing the number of people living downtown keeps it safer. He laid out a strategy today to build 25,000 more housing units in Windsor over the next 10 years. In order to redevelop areas like this parking lot, he would hire more building inspectors and planners, create a new community planning permitting system to expedite building permits, rezone all land along major corridors as mixed-use residential and commercial, reduce parking requirements, and provide incentives to developers to build within the current urban footprint through the creation of a municipal development corporation.
The developer would enter into an agreement with the City of Windsor. The city would work with the developer in hosting a design charrette involving voices from the community. The project is then fast-tracked into a development plan that would include being part of our new community planning permitting system, or CPPS.
Holt is committing to 50% of all new units built in the next 10 years to be developed in the current urban footprint. When asked about his take on housing, Dilkens pointed to his record.
We're moving forward on the Meadowbrook project, which is nearing completion. That's 150 units, a $50 million project nearly on the city's east side. We have been partners in so many other projects throughout the city.
Holt and Dilkens will square off in a debate tomorrow at the Serbian Center in Windsor. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
And as you heard there, the first mayoral debate takes place tomorrow morning. It's hosted by the Windsor-Essex Chamber of Commerce and starts at 10:30. People need to buy tickets to attend, and it will also air on Your TV Windsor at 7:30 tomorrow night. Election Day is October 24th, just a few weeks away. And Canada is set to lift border restrictions, making it easier for Americans to cross into Canada and here into Windsor. Businesses here hope those tourists will open their wallets once they arrive, and the exchange rate is sure enticing. Our dollar just hit a 2-year low. Now, this is how much a Canadian dollar is worth in the United States: 75 cents, around this time in 2020, up nearly a dime last year, but a steady drop since May this year, now at about 73 cents. And we wanted to get a sense of the winners and losers when our dollar drops. Experts say some who benefit the most are local manufacturers, especially for any business operating a contract that pays in American dollars. A big payday if it was signed during last year's peak.
Canada, we produce a lot more than we ever consume. And so a lot of our products and services are exported to other countries, all using American dollar as sort of like, you know, the gold standard. And so there can be tremendous opportunity for Windsor Essex companies who are exporting goods to take advantage of this low Canadian dollar, because all of a sudden our products become, you know, 2 or 3% more competitive on every quote, on every line.
But if there are winners, there are also losers following a low Canadian dollar, and that's cross-border shoppers. American gas prices might have been a delight for Windsorites earlier this year, but the exchange rate likely wipes away those margins now. There is one place where Canadians won't feel the pain: Mexican Town, a restaurant right across the river in Detroit. They take our cash at par, and even if that means a 30% discount.
Way back when, I think 2000 something, it dropped really low, and we still kept it, and it's just something we're always going to continue to do. I don't see us ever changing that.
Hurricane Ian slammed into Florida near Fort Myers today as a massive Category 4 storm, packing heavy winds and torrential rain. It made landfall near the barrier island of Coyo Costa, west of Fort Myers. That's about 200 kilometers southeast of Tampa. Officials are warning of powerful storm surges and catastrophic flooding. As the CBC's Katie Simpson reports, the Gulf Coast is bracing for conditions to get worse.
The brunt force of Hurricane Ian delivered the punch so many had feared. Historic levels of storm surge flooded Fort Myers shortly after landfall. The streets of Naples violently inundated with water levels expected to rise further. The high winds took out power lines, adding to the danger out on the roads.
This is going to be one of those historic storms, and it's going to really, shape the communities in Southwest Florida and have a profound impact on our state.
Hurricane Ian is so large, no part of the state will be spared from its carnage. Most skyways and bridges along the Gulf Coast are accessible only to emergency vehicles. And while communities in Ian's direct path looked like ghost towns before impact, there are fears too many people decided to hunker down and ride this out.
We ordered over 120,000 evacuations yesterday and only have about 3,000 people in our shelters. So hopefully you evacuated to a friend's house or another safe location in Florida or in Manatee County, because we're about to feel the brunt of a near Category 5 hurricane in our area.
At the Federal Emergency Command Post in Washington, D.C., coordinators finalized their response strategy with the help of the White House.
I made it clear to the governor and the mayors that the federal government is ready to help in every single way possible.
But that help can't really begin until it's safe enough for first responders to hit the ground. With hours of heavy rain still to come, people who need assistance have no choice but to wait. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Meanwhile, here in Canada, people continue to grapple with the damage caused by post-tropical storm Fiona, with many still struggling in the aftermath. In Nova Scotia, thousands are still without power. Some have no clean water, and some are even without a roof over their head after having their homes destroyed or condemned. Felicia Chandler has that story.
This is Alicia Getz and Mercury Getz. The mother and daughter are one of the many displaced in Halifax after Fiona. They were forced from their apartment in Spryfield and taken to a comfort center at the Canada Games Centre in Clayton Park. Their apartment has been condemned, and now they're not sure where they'll go.
We're trying to find homes, but there's no vacancy. It's extremely expensive. I work for Eastlink, but I got a week's vacation. I'm probably going on a short-term leave because honestly, what's next? I don't know. We're homeless, we're displaced, and we just want a place to lay our head out of here.
Red Cross and other organizations have been operating comfort centers throughout the city, providing beds, food, and even shelter for people's pets. The one at the Canada Games Centre has no closing date.
The first night when the hurricane hit, there was about 74 people that were staying in this shelter. We had 4 shelters set up around the city, so just a couple people in each of the other shelters. This was the largest one, and since then we've managed to, other people have made other arrangements and stuff since then, so we're down to about 27 people right now that we're trying to support.
Meaden says they'll also be connecting people who have been displaced with the municipality and other resources that could help them find new accommodations. Erica Fleck with Halifax Fire says cleanup has been difficult, but it's coming along. She thinks the bulk of things will be cleaned up by this weekend.
By the weekend, I expect, probably 90% of, the tree clearing and all of that will be done. There's always a few areas that are very tricky, again, because of that coordination piece, major power poles down. So again, we can't get in there until again, that coordination with Nova Scotia Power and then the service providers for telecoms. The work all has to be done in together.
Fleck says services such as garbage collection are back on schedule. As of last night, 29 roads were fully blocked and 20 are still partially blocked. They expect those to be cleared over the next coming weeks. Felicia Chandler, CBC News, Halifax.
Ottawa's historic $40 billion settlement agreement for First Nations child welfare could be in jeopardy. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal says there's a possibility the deal doesn't match the compensation orders, and now there are serious concerns the settlement might fall through. The CBC's Olivia Stefanovic has the latest.
Expectations are weighing on Ashley Bach, one of tens of thousands of First Nations youth waiting for compensation.
That cycle will start again with am I going to get a settlement? Am I going to have to relive my trauma?
4 years she's waited, now eligible for $40,000 or more under a settlement agreement reached between Canada and the Assembly of First Nations.
For me, the compensation would mean that I can go visit my community more. I do need to buy a car first so that I can drive there.
But the deal is stuck in limbo. In a letter obtained by CBC News, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal questions whether the agreement is too narrow and leaves some children out.
It's very worrisome that, this deal, if we don't have a deal by December 31st, that this could collapse.
The Assembly of First Nations is urging the tribunal to accept the deal so it can roll out compensation as soon as possible.
We can't just keep things status quo for another 15, 20 years trying to go back to the courts. We have to allow this to move on. Our families are waiting for us. Our communities are waiting for us.
We're not out of the woods yet at all, but it is something that is ongoing and we'll always be there to, especially with Indigenous children in mind, to make sure that this system serves them well.
The federal government and the AFN have until the end of the year to get approval before the money set aside for compensation is used for something else.
They should be printing those checks right now.
The tribunal must be satisfied the agreement meets its orders to compensate First Nations children and their caregivers for Canada's discrimination, $40,000 each.
We saw them turn around CERB checks in a matter of days. They should be doing that here too. No excuse.
The government and the AFN have another week and a half to make their case before the tribunal decides the fate of the largest settlement agreement in Canadian history. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
The undersea pipelines that are supposed to be carrying natural gas from Russia to Europe have suffered some mysterious damage. European officials believe it's sabotage, and some suspect Russia itself could be responsible. They say it fits with other desperate moves Moscow is making in its war with Ukraine. CBC's Briar Stewart reports.
Bubbling to the top of the Baltic Sea, gas leaching from Russia's Nord Stream pipelines. European officials believe this was the result of sabotage. Seismologists say they detected explosions south of a Danish island earlier this week.
So it was clearly planned, big operation, in all probability almost certainly a state actor behind it.
What is uncertain, who is behind this and why? The Nord Stream lines, which run from Russia to Germany, are a key flashpoint between Europe, which relies on imported energy, and Russia, which stands accused of weaponizing its supply.
Russia would be able to take what it
Phillips O'Brien is a professor of strategic studies and believes the pipeline damage is just another Russian signal.
We're going to do what we want to do. We're rather scorched earth, very dramatic, that we're willing to do something that you would not have expected us to do and take desperate measures.
The Kremlin calls those kinds of accusations stupid, but O'Brien says Putin has already signaled that the government is all in. It's mobilizing hundreds of thousands of men to try and hold on to Ukrainian territory. And it has staged what Western officials see as sham referendums. In recent days, hundreds have fled from the Russian-occupied territories, fearful of what comes next. No one wants to join Russia, no one. But with this pressure, people are scared. I didn't vote, says this man, because mostly everyone hides and doesn't vote in our settlement. In Red Square, it looks as if Moscow is getting ready to celebrate the annexation of the 4 territories. It's not clear when that will be, or what happens after Russia sends all of these new recruits to the front lines. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News at 6. Temperatures in the high teens on the way. Not as warm as we thought, but Dahlia will give us your full weather forecast coming up next. The province's financial watchdog warns Bill 124 could end up costing the provincial government more than $8 billion. That's if it loses in a court challenge of the bill. Now, Bill 124 caps public sector wage increases to a maximum of 1% a year for 3 years. Lorenda Redekop has those details.
Bill 124 has got to go!
The nurses' union has been the strongest voice opposing Bill 124, warning it'll cause people to leave the profession and won't attract new workers. Today, the financial watchdog said staff shortages in the province are a challenge.
Clearly, there's a demand for the jobs are there. They're being created. The government's effectively said we're going to add more service, we're going to add more hospital beds.
The shortages are across a range of sectors, with almost 9% of jobs vacant in nursing and residential care.
If you don't have enough folks to staff the hospital beds, you can build the beds, you can build the hospitals, but they're going to sit empty. So you're not going to have an impact on wait times.
The government responded in a statement saying the number of workers in hospitals has increased and will continue to grow under our government compared to the previous Liberal government. It also pointed out its one-time wage incentive for nurses and temporary wage increases for PSWs. The financial watchdog also looked specifically at Bill 124, saying the wage-limiting bill will save the government $9.7 billion. But unions are taking the government to court over it, saying it's unconstitutional. And if the government loses,
then we could see a potential cost of $8.4 billion over 5 years.
The Ontario Nurses Association released a statement saying the government is deliberately robbing nurses and healthcare professionals of the wages they are owed, driving even more out of the system at the worst possible time. The opposition parties reacted to this latest report and what they feel the message is for the government.
They cannot balance their budget on the backs of the people who've risked their lives in our hospitals and clinics these last few years.
Whether you pay the nurses now or you pay them when this Bill 124 comes to an end, the bill is coming due.
Bill 124 absolutely needs to go. It won't solve all of the problems, but it is a significant factor into why we are struggling in our healthcare system and why we simply don't have enough healthcare workers available to be at the front lines.
As for the latest on Bill 124, it's unclear when a decision could come on the court challenge. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
We know geese love Windsor's riverfront, but those aren't the only birds who call it home. The signs are very clear. Keep out of the pond, not a rule everyone seems to enjoy. A great blue heron hanging out at the pond. Our Jennifer LaGrassa capturing this video last night. She's calling him Frank. And this is at the pond just west of the Canadian flag. And Dahlia joins us live now for a look at weather. Dahlia, the bird rather, seemed to be enjoying the pond. A little cool for me to take a dip, though, I think.
That's right. I mean, Frank is also a rebel, from what we can tell. Really doesn't let anything stop him. But you know what also doesn't stop us? Sunshine. That's maybe a reason why Frank decided to go out, because we are going to see more sunshine on the way and a little bit of breeze, but definitely not suitable conditions for us to be dipping ourselves into water, unless you like polar dips. But anyways, the normal high usually this time of year is 19 degrees. We're sitting at 15 degrees today in Windsor, and the normal low is usually 9. We're sitting around 10. So we're really sitting around seasonal temperatures right where we're supposed to be. Now, currently it is 13 degrees in Windsor, a little cooler out in London and Kitchener, 11 degrees, but still in those double digits, unlike what happens later in the evening and overnight. Now, are we seeing any rain coming through? We'll get to that in just a second. Let's just talk about first the frost advisory. It's up in northern Ontario, so that's quite the opposite from rain, really. I mean, factoring in those cool temperatures, but really what we're seeing here, and the reason why we're going to be seeing some dry conditions and clear skies, is because this high pressure system that's moving in from south of the border with that cold front that's going across New York, giving us that high pressure system, those clear skies, that sunshine that most of us like to see. And here we will see a little bit of cloud coverage across Windsor and southern Ontario, but like I said, it will clear up with that high pressure system moving in across the province, giving us those clear skies as we head into the weekend as well. A little bit of cloud coverage coming through that might peak in around Sunday. We're also expecting some windy conditions tonight. Winds will gust up to 31 kilometers an hour, and then it'll slowly get lighter as we head into Thursday morning, and it will become even lighter at around Thursday evening. So some breeze overnight tonight, and then as we head into tomorrow, that will start to clear up. Temperatures will drop, though, tonight. So it will be a little cooler, single digits. It's 7 degrees in Windsor, and much cooler out in London, 3 degrees. Now, look at that sunshine for most of the next few days, especially as we head into the weekend. A little bit of cloud coverage, but for the most part, sunny conditions, single digits in the evening. What more can we ask for?
All right. Thanks so much, Dahlia.
Thanks, Jason.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News, a local family makes a fishy invention and hopes to land a deal on Dragon's Den. That story is next.
Home.
Will an inventor from Amherstburg reel in a deal on Dragon's Den? Stuart Smith and his late father invented the rod caddy, which helps protect fishing rods from getting damaged. The local inventor hopes this exposure will help other aspiring inventors to follow their dreams.
First, in my 90 seconds, they were very intrigued because, well, number one, there's nothing like it out there. And we had some fun with it. I handed it to the Dragons, and they were having some jokes with it there. I think a couple of them were pretending to hit each other. They're pulling the elastic straps with it. Like, we had a good laugh, absolutely. Whether or not they were anglers or avid fishermen or recreational fishermen, I'm not sure. but the product definitely got their attention. What a great platform. Dragon's Den, it really in Canada, I mean, it's kind of as big as it gets, and as terrifying as it was. It was a fantastic means to an end. And I think I said this earlier, but regardless of a deal or not, it's to show if you've got an idea and you believe in it, don't back off. Go, push, give it everything you've got. And good things will come. And this experience, whichever way it went, deal or no deal, was amazing.
Now that episode airs tonight at 8 o'clock right here on CBC. That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and we're on social media as well. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is coming up next. Have a great night.